Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out to our debate tonight. Thank you to the Cochise Bar Association for putting this all together and really getting everybody involved in an important conversation about the way our local courts are handled and who handles them for us. We don't want to waste too much time getting everything started. We got a lot on the agenda tonight. Two positions we're talking about here tonight. We're going to start off with the judge races. We have candidates, two that are going against one another in the July 30th primary for the District 4 Superior Court judgeship, and one is running unopposed in 5. He has graciously joined us to give his thoughts on the matter, and obviously what he thinks matters a lot to all of us. So without further ado, let's get started here. We're starting with the judicial races in District number 4. In no particular order, they'll come up and they'll take seats as they want them, and then after they do that, I will have some cards here, and they will choose the order that they select from. They will be A, B, or C, and we'll do questions in the order of A, B, C, B, C, A, C, A, B, and back and forth we'll go so that everything is fair and balanced. And so let's start with the District 4 race. Ruth Faulkner, come on up, grab any seat you like. Ruth is running in the District 4 race. In the District 5 race, running unopposed, Jason Lindstrom, Judge Jason Lindstrom. And running against Faulkner in the Republican primary in District 4, County Administrator Rich Karwaczka. Okay, like Chris said, they handed out cards out front, and like I said, it's up to me, but I'm always partial to more questions, more discussion, and more fun. So, in all probability, we'll have some questions as long as they're proper and respectful and advance the conversation. We're going to have, in this debate, we're going to have 6 questions for each. They will have, depending on each question, they will have 2 to 3 minutes to answer each question. And we will answer in the order that they draw. So without further ado, we're going to do the blind draw of who is A, B, and C. Okay, everybody remember to get up close to your mic or take the mic in hand just to make sure everybody can hear you real clearly. So we'll start off with kind of a question that kind of gets people to know who you are. The question is, this will be first for Mr. Karwaczka. What are 3 things voters should know that make you a better candidate?
So the 3 things, can everyone hear me?
No.
All right.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the 3 things that differentiate me from the other candidate is 1 is legal experience, 2 leadership and administrative experience, and 3 community engagement. So when we talk about legal experience, I have 23 years of legal experience. I started as a prosecutor, transitioned into criminal defense and a private firm of my own. And then eventually I came here to Cochise County as a public defender. So when you talk about the whole spectrum, at least in the criminal arena, I've done it all. So I've been in prosecutor role, public defender, and also in private practice. Now, in private practice, I was able to handle a lot of other matters that are not criminal. And in Cochise County, that is important. We have a small community. Just because Division 4 handles a majority of criminal cases, that is not necessarily what will happen going forward. So I do have a wide range in civil law as well. When we talk about immigration, family law, and also contracts, landlord-tenant. Now, in addition to that, we talk about leadership. I've been in leadership roles in a lot of opportunities, especially here in Cochise County. I was the public defender. I'm currently the county administrator for the county. Also, when we talk about community engagement, since I got here, this is my home. I immediately got involved in a lot of organizations. Currently, I'm in the Rotary Group. I think it's my time.
I think it is, but I don't know how to turn it off. We're all done.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Well done, Richard. Okay, thank you. We'll get that sorted out real quick here. Next up will be Jason Lindstrom. He's running unopposed, District 5. What are 3 things voters should know that make you the better candidate? I mean, obviously, just your qualifications, even though there's no opposition.
3 things about me, and we did. Oh.
Check, check.
Yeah.
Three things, and these questions were given to us in advance, so we had a little time to think about them. First of all, I grew up in Cochise County. I graduated high school in Bisbee, so I consider myself to be kind of one of the homegrown people in politics here. I've been an attorney for quite a while. My experience was mainly in the county attorney's office, but I didn't have a private practice down here before taking the bench. I think the things that I would like to say that are valuable to the bench would be, I'm not an activist judge. You know when you come into my court that what I'm going to do is my best to follow the law as it's written. I'm not going to try to change the world from the bench. That's a role for our legislature and other members of our government. My hope is that by the time you leave, or come into my court, you know that you're going to get a consistent ruling, that you know what to expect. I consider myself to be in the role of a referee to make sure that the rules are followed, that everyone gets due process. And at the end of the day, when you come into court, you're going to be treated just like everybody else. I don't care if you're a high-powered attorney from Scottsdale or pro someone who's coming in representing themselves. You're going to be given adequate voice, and you'll be treated fairly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judge Lindstrom. And Ruth Faulkner, same question to you. What are 3 things voters should know that make you the better candidate?
Thank you. First, I have more Arizona legal experience. I went to an Arizona law school, Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law. I practiced as an intern at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office starting in 2012. Did 2 felony jury trials as a law student. Graduated, passed the bar, been a licensed attorney in Arizona since 2013. I'm currently practicing as an attorney. I am familiar with the current laws and
Ruth Faulkner, same question to you. What are 3 things voters should know that make you the better candidate?
Thank you. First, I have more Arizona legal experience. I went to an Arizona law school, Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law. I practiced as an intern at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office starting in 2012. Did 2 felony jury trials as a law student. Graduated, passed the bar, been a licensed attorney in Arizona since 2013. I'm currently practicing as an attorney. I am familiar with the current laws and practices of the court, the county attorney's office, the public defender's office, so I don't have to brush up on the law. I can hit the ground running. I'm practiced as an attorney here in Cochise County with the county. It'll be 7 years in September. So I worked as in the legal defender's office. I represented juveniles. I've represented felony defendants. Then I went and worked with the county attorney's office where I'm still practicing. I've done many different cases, from felony drugs, misdemeanor cases, juvenile defense. I practiced in front of every judge in this county. So my experience speaks to someone who can, like I said, hit the ground running, educated on the law. I go to legal classes to become acquainted with the criminal law. So that's why I think I'm the better candidate. And I think I'm the better looking one of the 3.
Nicely done, nicely done. Okay. Well, now that we know who everybody is and where they come from, we're going to move on to some issues questions here. The first one, and the first answer will be Judge Lindstrom, is about pro per litigants, which to the lay people is someone who's representing themselves in a case. Increasingly, people are representing themselves in court. It's estimated that 70% of divorce and civil litigants appear in court without a lawyer, either because there isn't one to take the case, or they cannot afford a lawyer, or they do not want a lawyer. What is your judicial approach to unrepresented litigants?
Well, that's kind of a tough question, and we do get a lot of people coming in. We do get a lot of people that come into courts without an attorney, and I treat them. I explain this to them right from the beginning. I do expect them to follow protocols in the courtroom. I do guide them to some degree, but I'm not allowed to give them legal advice. One of the things that I think has been helpful when I deal with unrepresented people is explain to them that, especially if I'm in a situation where I have to make a decision based on the facts they're presenting, people sometimes forget, and lawyers are trained, but ordinary people coming into the courtroom are not, that I don't know the person in front of me, I don't know the people they're talking about, I don't have any preconceived notion. So one of the things that I think has been helpful is to tell them, explain it to me like I'm 5 years old, and I know nothing about anything you're talking about. And I do think that that's helpful to people that come in without an attorney. And at the end of the day, I try to run my courtroom as though they're represented, but it's impossible to do it when we don't have an attorney. Oftentimes, I'll conduct what could be considered a resolution management conference in a family law case prior to the evidentiary hearing, which is more informal. And I think that when you approach a case with an unrepresented person, it's more beneficial sometimes to start in an informal process where you sit down and have a roundtable discussion with everybody and find out where everyone's coming from and what page they're on. I think that it's going to become easier and easier as technology advances to be an unrepresented person coming into the courtroom, especially when we start utilizing tools like AI. And I think there's some questions that I'll go into that in a little more detail later on. I'll pass them to the next person.
Okay, well, Ruth Faulkner, same question to you. Pro per litigants, where do you stand on that?
Well, I've had to work with pro per litigants in justice court. Many times people come in and they represent themselves. I think the biggest thing is communication, ensuring comprehension, explanation. So people sometimes are very sophisticated or not sophisticated at all, get their legal information from Judge Judy or the internet. So the important thing is to not use legal jargon, not use big words, not speak to them like a normal person to convey your message. And look for comprehension. I'm a communication studies major, was my undergrad. Most of communication is nonverbal. Look for nonverbal clues. If someone's giving you that 1,000-yard stare, do you understand what I'm saying? Do you need me to explain that? Do you have any questions? And explain the process, why we're here, what we're talking about, what's the purpose, and treating people with dignity and respect, even though you're accused of committing a crime or going through a divorce or whatever the case may be. You're a human being, particularly in criminal law, you're innocent until proven guilty. And I've seen people do it where they talk at someone or talk down to them. And I'm all about making sure someone understands their rights, understands the process, and can knowingly make decisions. And that's my approach to working with someone who is unrepresented.
Okay, Miss, that'll conclude question number 2 for us. This one will be 2 minutes per question. Question number 3. Oh God, I forgot. Rich Karwaczka, how can anyone forget Rich Karwaczka? I'm sorry about that. Go right ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. So my approach is very simple. You heard it sort of, it's patience, and you have to have the ability to explain and the flexibility to explain in different ways. You have a highly charged situation. People don't like to come to court. People don't like to speak in public. And then you throw in the emotions of what they're there for. So you have to be extremely patient, because you might have this individual on your first case and then a separate individual on the second case, and still have the stamina and the patience to deal with the whole call, and you have to be consistent with them. And as was previously mentioned, people sometimes understand and sometimes they don't. The whole purpose is to make sure the people that are not represented, that they're heard. And that is the whole goal. And so I believe through my whole experience, that has set me up to have those assets, to not only be patient, but also explain. And I think the best experience, and if some people can relate, I have a teenage daughter, so I have extreme amount of patience, and I have to repeat myself constantly. So that's how I handle this. Thank you.
Fantastic. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and go off script here and ask just one quick follow-up question with just a yes or no, and we'll start on the end there with Jason. It's often said with pro per litigants that the person who's defending themselves has a fool for a client. Do you think that kind of joke still holds water, or is that less true than it used to be?
It probably depends on the area of law. It probably depends on the area of law that you're talking about. I would highly recommend that if you're in a serious criminal matter that you get an attorney. We actually will give you a free attorney if you can't afford one yourself. But I think that depending on your comfort level, you can represent yourself. As long as you're comfortable with the subject matter and you're not afraid of being in court. I've seen people do a really good job, and there's a lot of really good resources online, but it is a commitment. And I mean, lawyers go to law school and spend a lot of time studying this stuff, but there have been several people without an attorney that I think have done really well. It's easier for me on the bench when there are attorneys involved because they kind of know the protocols, they know the drill, they know how things are going to work. So sometimes it takes a little more time when you're dealing with people without an attorney, but it is absolutely something that you can do if you're willing to invest the time and you're not afraid of being in court.
Rich, your thoughts?
The rules of substantive law and procedure still apply. So yes, if you're charged with murder, I would not recommend representing yourself. If you're trying to sue for a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, I would recommend not representing yourself because the corporation that you're going against is going to have extremely intelligent, bright attorneys. The prosecution are extremely intelligent prosecutors. So there are defenses and there are rules that you can take advantage of, but if you don't know the system and you're learning as you go, and as I mentioned before, you're already stressed, you're already charged with, let's say, the murder case. To be under that pressure, I would say that you would be a fool to represent yourself.
Okay, and Ruth, what are your thoughts?
I think it depends. I've had people do a better job representing themselves than maybe an attorney would, advocate for themselves, and then I've had people do an opening statement and admit to committing the crime. So certainly, it's difficult and it's a case-by-case basis. And going back to the other question, I think that is why you have to really explain things to people and help them understand. But it's it looks far easier on television than it is in real life.
Can I just say, I wouldn't advise anyone to represent themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's fascinating. All right, let's move on to question 3, 2 minutes per. We're going to start this one out with Ruth Faulkner. The question is about technology in the courtroom. The pandemic had a huge impact on the use of technology in the courtroom. Virtual appearance by attorneys, clients, witnesses, and even judges. In addition, electronic filing, signing, and discovery has been implemented in courts across the country. Describe your preparedness and comfort level with these technological developments, as well as any concerns you have about their use.
Well, I think technology is great when it works. I think it's an aid to the legal system, it's great. I am prepared. I've been in Judge Lindstrom's courtroom. He does Zoom hearings. I've done telephonic with other lawyers or defendants. So I am comfortable and prepared, but my concern with technology is Are we really giving people representation that is competent? And you have people whose lawyer's on the phone and they're on video in the jail, or they're appearing via Zoom. There was an attorney who was on his phone walking between courtrooms. And I think it's good to keep so someone doesn't have to spend a couple of hours in a car driving down here, but I'm more concerned with, are people paying attention? Do defendants, particularly unrepresented, have the ability to use the technology? Are we gonna be too comfortable where we're not really accomplishing anything? We send people documents all the time via DocuSign, and that's a big problem for a lot of people. So if, as an aid, yes, that's great, but I'm worried that people are not going to have meaningful representation, meaningful exchanges, understand what's going on if everybody's appearing virtually. So those are my concerns.
Okay, same question to you, Rich, back in the courtroom.
Yes, I think in the generation that I grew up in a sense that when I went to law school, they taught you how to research on the paper, and then also this new thing called legal research on the internet. So I have seen the transition, very comfortable with the use of technology in the courtroom, and it's actually a necessity, because being in county administration, one of the biggest things is getting attorneys here. So you have to use technology in order to possibly get representation. We are not getting attorneys into this community. So we have to effectively use technology to get more resources here. And you can do it now. That said, I'm also part of the discussions of trying to get better technology in the courtroom, and you have to be a realist about that. We have an aging courtroom, and to fit that out with new technology is extremely difficult. In the past couple of years, we got some new technology in the courtroom. It's called air conditioning. Okay? That took a little bit. So, in order to get up to speed and to use it effectively, it is a great tool, but we need to get that infrastructure in place. Also, there's another tool that, if used properly, you have the electronic home monitoring device, that you can use technology to help out probation and to offset some of those burdens of actually going out to seeing people at their site. Because now you can simply see where they went to. If they're supposed to go to treatment, you can make sure that they go to the treatment because you see their movements instead of trying to track them down or trying to go to a place and find them. So I've seen the total picture of what it looks like and the cost of it and the practicality of it. I've used it, so it is a useful tool. I'm excited that hopefully we can outfit and use that technology in an appropriate way. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jason.
Well, I guess when I took the bench the first time, I had much higher expectations of the capabilities of our courts. As it turns out, we actually are using really old technology. It's really outdated. I compare it to some of the databases we used when we were learning how to use computers in the 90s. So government is historically behind when it comes to technology, but I will say since COVID, things have changed a lot because we were put in a situation where we were forced to adopt technologies, and some of those probably would never have been adopted if they weren't forced. And so in that way, I'm kind of glad it happened. We've been trying to go digital with a paperless system for maybe 2 decades, and we're almost there. The problem with technology is it doesn't matter if one department is super high tech, because there's a lot of other people involved and agencies involved. If the courts are super high tech, we still need to have the clerk's office and the county attorney's office and the public defender's office and the other attorney's agencies, etc., on board. We all have to be able to do these things in unison with each other. So sometimes you'll see one agency way ahead of another, and it just takes time to kind of work it all out and make it work everywhere. Have our technology be compatible. As I stated earlier, we are entering a new era. We have this thing called AI, and it's coming. and it's going to be dramatic as to what will happen with our court system. Just as of a few weeks ago, with Westlaw, one of the systems that we use, I can ask a question and an AI agent will give me a kind of a legal synopsis in a similar way that maybe a clerk would do in the old days. This is just beginning, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to help not only the courts, but the people that come into the courts. You'll be able to go on your home computer, ask a question, maybe even have a step-by-step analysis of what you need to do when you're addressing your legal problem. So it's right on the horizon. Give it time. Thanks.
All right, thanks a lot, Judge Lindstrom. Actually, I have a follow-up question. We're doing pretty well on time, so I did have a kind of interesting one. I'd like to start with you, Jason, as a sitting judge. Have you found like a time during COVID when, especially in criminal cases where the defendant was maybe in jail and only on screen, did that tilt the scales of justice at all against or in favor of a defendant if they weren't present in the courtroom physically?
Not at all, in my opinion. Zoom is interesting because sometimes the camera's on and you see someone's dirty house. There's been a lot of interesting screen names. One of the attorneys this morning was zooming in from his car. He was pulled over, of course, so he wasn't driving. But I have seen people driving from the passenger seat when they're a witness in the case. So there's all kinds of weird things that are going to happen along the way, but I don't think it's, in my opinion at least, it hasn't been prejudicial to like a criminal defendant.
Rich, do you think it's affected the scales of justice?
No, actually, and Cochise County was one of the only areas where we still progressed through during COVID. You know, we were still having trials. Defendants were still being heard or being sentenced. So yes, there was issues. Yes, there were delays. You had a packed courtroom before COVID of people charged with crimes, and now you got to bring them over one at a time. So, there is a delay because you have to come away from the jail to the courtroom. And there was a lot of confusions, but overall, I think we did a really good job here in Cochise County. And people weren't, I don't believe, unnecessarily delayed in justice.
Ruth, your thoughts?
I'm proud of our county. We didn't shut down like Maricopa County or Pima County. And during COVID, it was good to have people coming on video from the jail. We did pleas via video. It was very helpful when people were quarantined or with transportation. Some of that has carried over. That's very helpful. Instead of bringing half the jail over for court, it's only people who are going and doing a plea or doing something substantive. So I think it was good, and we did a good balancing, and certainly the judges made sure that if somebody wanted to be there, they could be there, but if they were good doing it by video, then we could move our cases along. So I think there was a good balance struck.
Okay. Moving on to question number 4. This will start out with Rich Karwaczka. Unpopular decisions. How would you handle a situation in which you must make a ruling that could have an adverse consequence for your career as a judge?
First, you can't have that thought going into it. If you think or have a thought process of the way you're going to decide a matter is going to change because it might affect whether you're going to be reelected, then you shouldn't be running for judge. In my position as county administrator, my job is up every 2 weeks because the supervisors can maybe not like the tie I'm wearing and then put me up on the agenda and let me go. So you can't live in that fear. What you have to do is abide by the law. You're supposed to apply the facts of the case to the law in an unbiased, impartial manner. And that's what you should always do. Now, if I ever felt that there was a case that I had that much pressure, that I would actually have someone else and a conversation with colleagues, just to make sure that I'm on the right mindset, that didn't influence my decision. So I would have a safety valve if I believe that was truly in place. But you can't have that thought or that mindset. You have to go back to what the people elected you for. And that is simply to be unbiased and impartial, not to be reelected.
Okay, and moving on to you, Jason.
Well, one thing to keep in mind is that probably almost every case that comes in the courtroom is adversarial to the person who didn't get what they wanted. And oftentimes, it's an adversarial decision for everybody, because everybody leaves a little bit unhappy. So the question, how do you avoid an adversarial decision? You can't, and that's pretty much being a judge every day. You're the gatekeeper. There's always someone that's mad when you make your final decision, whether it's an attorney or someone who has an interest. They're hoping that you'll uphold. So that's just the nature of the job. I did have a high-profile political person have someone that came in to get an order of protection against them. I granted it. I won't mention any names, but I mean, I think that's probably what you're looking for when you say you do make an adversarial decision that could be detrimental to you politically or something like that. The answer would be yes, it happened all the time, and in fact, it happened every day.
Ruth?
Well, as a prosecutor, I think I probably make decisions that are unpopular at least a couple of times a week. People don't like my pleas. People don't like, what I'm offering, how I want to resolve a case. But as a judge, it's a higher calling. You are there to do justice. It's not about, are people going to like me? Or not. It's about following the law and the Constitution. It's not about, it's not Miss America contest. So it reminds me of John Adams, who was an attorney, and he represented British soldiers who shot into a crowd and killed some colonists. And he represented them, even though it could have destroyed his reputation, because he believed in the fact that everybody deserves a fair trial and to be represented. And that's the kind of calling we have, not only as an attorney, but as a judge, even more so. And if you can't make those kind of decisions, if you're worrying about, what's the paper gonna say about me? What's Terry Joe gonna write about me? Then you shouldn't be running for judge, absolutely.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question, and there are cards out front. We're doing really well on time, so it's a very good chance we'll have an opportunity to answer some of your questions. Laura, where do they turn the questions into on the cards?
Christine.
Oh, to Christine in the back there. She's waving things, so we're doing pretty well here, so if you want your questions asked, there's a good chance they will be asked. Moving on to question number 5, and we'll start off with Jason. Who is your favorite jurist of all time and why?
This was a tough one. This was a tough one. In fact, some of my favorite jurists are in this room. A lot of people that were important to my legal career and mentors for me. Well, I see a few of them in the crowd right now. So thank you. I think that when you ask who's your favorite jurist, the first thing that came to my mind was if you ask a kid who their favorite sports athlete is, they don't usually give you the name of the ref. And in a way, that's kind of how I felt about the question. And I think that the best jurists are the ones that you probably never hear about because they're not the ones in control of the game. And what I mean by that is they create an environment where everyone gets to play by the rules. And the kids don't put the poster of the ref up in their room. But there are a lot of famous people that I respect a lot, historical figures. Thomas Jefferson is a jurist, an attorney. He's someone that I look up to. I don't know.
Okay. Ruth, your favorite jurist, why?
Well, I went to Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law and had the great honor of meeting Sandra Day O'Connor and hearing her speak and talk about her life story. And here is a woman who graduated number 3 in her law class from Stanford Law and tried to get a job, and no one would hire her because she was a woman. And that just blew me away, that in 1952, people are not letting women be attorneys. And I admire her because of her perseverance, the fact that she wouldn't let anybody stop her. And she went and found a local county attorney and offered to work for free. And when he said, we don't have an office, she said, well, if your secretary will let me, I'll go sit in her workspace and work. And that's how she got a start. She was trying to, and about 30 years after that, Ronald Reagan is tapping her to be the first woman serving on the Supreme Court. So to me, that's just an amazing story of perseverance and how she wouldn't let anybody stop her. She forged her own path. She was a Arizona state senator. She was elected judge. She was appointed to the Court of Appeals and was a trailblazer for women in the legal community. And that's why she's my favorite jurist.
And Rich, your favorite?
Well, this question reminded me of law school. I think that's the last time someone asked me what my jurist was. But the two that came to mind immediately was Justice Scalia. And I remember reading his opinions, and it just made sense. The way he wrote logically, and the most important part is him using judicial restraint. And the fact of the matter that he was a big component of judicial restraint and not having personal political views affect the outcome or his decisions. Another one that came to mind, and this one is from law school because of the name, Learned Hand.
Oh.
So if you went to law school, you read it, and I had to read it a couple times, like, is that correct? Learned Hand? And I was like, that is amazing, and his story is actually amazing because he was never a Supreme Court justice. However, he was so influential in the legal community. Those were the two biggest names. But one of the things that I remember coming to Cochise County for is I was tired in Chicago of the judiciary there. And the fact that you had inexperienced judges that just got elected that were causing havoc. And when I came here, the judiciary was simply amazing. And I fell back in love with the law and the legal community. So it's a mixed bag of not only what I remember, but the people that I was in front of that inspired me to keep going.
Okay, and we'll move on to the last question here, and Ruth will kick that one off. But looks like we'll have a few minutes for some questions from the audience, so Christine, you could bring those up here shortly. But we'll start this last question off with Ruth. If you could make one improvement to the local court, what would it be?
Well, I would love to have testimony dogs, and Laura's in shock. When I was working in Maricopa County in the sex crimes unit, they had dogs that would go to court, particularly with children, to help them feel more comfortable testifying. It's hard enough talking in front of people, even if you're experienced, but then you have to talk in front of strangers about the worst things that have happened to you, and the person who did it or is accused of doing it is sitting there staring at you. So I think that would be great, not for every case necessarily, but in the cases involving children, cases involving sex abuse, cases that are very difficult subjects for people to talk about, and people who have been very harmed and traumatized. And since I have extra time, I'll pick a second. I would love to have legal clerks to provide opportunities for law students to come down to work in the court, to help the judges. And that was a great help to me, being a law student, getting hands-on practical experience. It is very difficult, as Mr. Karwaczka stated, getting attorneys down here. And if we can spread the word about how great our community is, then I think that would be a win and give law students some practical experience.
Okay, Rich.
So for me, I guess it's simple. It's not very exciting. It's efficiency. So our legal system, the way it is in Cochise County, it's not a smooth process. So what I would like to do, and the first thing I would do is re-examine what we're doing currently and try to find efficiencies in those areas and gathering communication with the whole criminal justice system, not only judges, but the prosecutors, the defense, the clerks, probation, even county administration, to re-examine what we're doing so people can understand and move through the system in a smooth way. And that's not unfortunately happening right now. And not only internally in the county, but externally we have private attorneys to get their feedback to how can we be better. Now, like I said, that's not exciting. That's not groundbreaking. That's simply saying, what can we do better and cheaper? Because we're looking at the pocketbook and kind of understand the function of the judiciary and how much money is there and the amount of money our county generates. And the quickest and easiest return is improving what we do without adding things. So that's what I would do.
Okay, and Jason, you want to take us home on
Sure. Obviously, efficiency would be a big deal. We only have so many days we can work on our calendars, and those days fill up. And it takes 2 4-week murder trials to take up to 12 months of the whole year. And 4 of them, and suddenly your year is down to 2/3 of your time. It's really difficult to create an efficient calendar. And as a result, I think, and some of you probably have had the experience where you go into court for something and you don't get a calendar date for a month or 2 months, and it gets continued, and then it goes 3 months again. And a divorce case, which should realistically take 6 months or less, ends up taking a year. That's something that does happen all the time, and I do think the technology is going to create some of the efficiency that Mr. Karwaczka has referenced. I'm hoping for that anyway. I do think that the implementation of AI is going to be important because it'll help not only you, the public, but it'll help the people working in the government to be more efficient. I'm one of those people that I don't believe it's going to take your job. I think it's going to make you the equivalent of 2 people. So, for example, my judicial assistant, she's not losing her job anytime soon, but if she has AI beside her to be an agent to help her crunch numbers, she's going to be 3 people. And she's going to be faster at doing everything she does. And so I'm really looking forward to this new technology being integrated into our court system. My court has been using Zoom Court. In fact, you can zoom in to my court as long as it's an open case. 90% of the cases that I have on my docket are open. Go find the public calendar, go look for the link and password, and you can zoom in. If you see an interesting case you want to follow, you can do that. It's nice not only for you, for purposes of keeping tabs on our system and being a participant and seeing what happens to people and what the judges do, but it also allows attorneys, as was mentioned earlier, to zoom in from Tucson or Phoenix. At one point in time, that used to cost, coming from Phoenix, that round trip is maybe 6 hours, just to get billed for that. So Zoom has made a big difference and has created some efficiencies, but we've got a long way to go.
Okay, fantastic. We do have a few questions from the audience here, and so we're not going to, these are not assigned questions. This is if you want to jump out and feel like it. If no one wants to answer it, I wouldn't judge you. No pun intended. But if anyone wants to jump in on these, hey, we got another one. Okay, for anyone running for judge, what are your views on clergy/client privilege as it pertains to confessions of sexual abuse of a child? Again, no requirement to jump in. If we want to let that one go, that's fine.
Well, let me just say that that's an issue, and this is a quirky thing, and since at this point I don't have an opponent, and people sitting beside me are running against each other, I'll answer this one. And basically, that's an issue that could come before me in court, and because it's a possible issue that could come before me, we're not allowed to answer it. That's frustrating to people in the public that come to us and ask us questions, because a lot of your questions, the if you're talking to someone who's running for the state House or Senate or some other position, they aren't as restricted as we are. We're not allowed to answer any questions that could theoretically be before us at some point in the future because it would indicate some sort of bias. So that's a question that I would decline to answer.
Okay, here's another one. There's one last one we'll close on. It's just spicy. You might pass on, but let's go to this. Is kind of more. And I know you're probably going to not want to comment on this, but I think it just from a logistic point of view, especially your thoughts on this, Jason, about the new county jail. What would be the positives and negatives for keeping it in Bisbee or putting it somewhere else in the county? I guess I think maybe we should just look at that maybe in terms of the logistics of getting people into the courtroom versus anything else. But we can also pass on that one too.
I'll answer it really quickly, but I actually think that as a prosecutor and as a county administrator, there's some other thoughts that could be added. Our dream in our criminal justice community is to have one building where we are all housed. Jail, court, public defender's office, the prosecutor's office. That would lead to some of that efficiency we've been talking about. As has been indicated, we're in a really old building. It's a really cool building. Tourists come and take pictures of it. It's got some interesting aesthetics, but it's not built for the modern day. Those big block walls and everything else. I mean, as was also mentioned, we just recently got an AC unit. It's not built to be a courthouse. So when we finally decide as a community to build an adequate facility, it's going to actually probably save us a lot of money in the long run, and it'll be much more efficient. Criminal justice will be more effective. Everything we do in the courts will be more effective and faster. That's my answer.
Well, Bisbee is the county seat, so having the jail in Bisbee would make sense for a logistic reasons. When I was working up in Navajo County, we had what Jason was talking about, where you had a complex. You had the jail, you had the county attorney, the public defender, the legal defender, and all of the courtrooms. And it was great. You could walk over to the jail and meet with your client. You could walk over to the court. You could walk over to one of the other offices. So you didn't have to get in your car, drive over to the jail, drive back. It made things happen faster. It was easier to bring prisoners in and out. So it is more efficient, but as far as, I think Mr. Karwaczka, being the county administrator, could speak more as to where we're at in the process, but those are my thoughts.
So there's a lot of different factors that you need to consider in where the jail goes. And one of those that has been mentioned is the inmates, right? The criminal courts are in Bisbee. So if you're talking about now building a new jail and you build it somewhere else, now there's additional costs of transportation. So can you just say absolutely Bisbee and just look at that one factor? Absolutely not. So we're currently in the process of choosing and having a consultant do the needs assessment. And they look at several different points of data and bring that information to the board and to the community. And there'll be a lot of discussions because I've heard a lot of arguments for many different places. One being Sierra Vista. Well, why don't you build it near Sierra Vista? Because that's where the majority of the people that are being arrested are coming from. So now you're saving the transportation costs of the law enforcement to go all the way to Bisbee. You know, I've heard, why don't you build it next to Benson? Because now you're next to I-10, and maybe you can fully staff the jail, because the jail has never been fully staffed since I've been around, and it is short staffed. So where do you do that? But that'll be another study of where is your employment coming from? Because we're not competing with Tucson. We'll never compete with Tucson. So do you put it where it is in Bisbee? Because we do get a lot of people from Douglas and the Bisbee area that come work at the jail, which makes sense. So there are several points that you need to look at, and not just one determining that factor. So that'll be the process, is once we have those discussions. Also, community input. So please attend when you hear these events about the new jail and where it's supposed to be placed, so you can get your voice heard and your concerns met. So
Okay, there was one other question, it's very long, and if you wrote this one, I encourage you to probably approach the candidates themselves afterward. It's kind of a very specific situation. We're gonna close this one rip straight from the headlines, and again, feel free to pass if you like. This obviously does not affect anything you're going to see. What is your opinion of the felony convictions against former President Trump? If anyone wants to jump or not, it's fine too. Going once, going twice. So let's all give these candidates a big round of applause for their time here.